Hi, I'm Pam, and I'm here to answer your questions. So today we're doing a Q&A special. I had planned to do one for like a celebratory 75,000 subscriber milestone thing, and then that kind of came and went and I didn't get around to it, and then I thought maybe 80, and that went too. So I guess this is like an 82,000 subscriber special. I took a bunch of questions from the lovely people who support me over on Patreon. They provided a lot of them, and then I'm going to also answer a few that were left in a community post I put up soliciting questions from other people as well. Just pick some of my favorite ones out of those. So with that said, let's get on with it. I just got these new glasses, which I quite like, but I also think they're really reflecting my ring light, so I'm going to take this off for the rest of the video. But let's get to the questions. So to start out, we've got a couple questions from Liam. Other than YouTube and gaming, what are your hobbies? So I've got a few other hobbies. I'm a big foodie. I love going out to nice restaurants and getting food. I love cooking. I love other people cooking for me, just finding new things to eat, trying out new ingredients and things like that. So that's one of my things I really like to do, also to go with the food. You probably know I'm quite interested in wine. I have tried a bunch of it. I've been to like a bunch of vineyards and tried to learn a little bit about the process. My friend Michelle from PD's Power Hour is always teaching me new things about wine and introducing me to new ones. So that's definitely one of them. Also, the particular COVID hobby that I adopted over the last couple years was plants. And historically, I've been not so great with plants. I tended to kill them, but I've been going okay with it. You can probably see a couple of them in the background here. I might like do a little insert with all my little windowsill plants, but I've gotten into like succulents and then some other sort of like low light plants. I've even started propagating my succulents for the first time just recently, and that seems to be going better than I expected it to. So I will soon have lots of baby plants to look after, but that's been something that's been a lot of fun. Otherwise, I just enjoy other media than video games. I like to read a good book. I like to watch movies. I especially like to do these things with friends and then be able to like talk about them or discuss them or react to them together. That's always fun. So yeah, I'm kind of, a bit of a homebody, so most of my hobbies are centered around things I can do here, but yeah, those are my hobbies. So if you could buy any video game, price not being a problem, what would it be and why? I feel like I've gotten to a point in my collection where I kind of have most of what I want. There are some like PS1 JRPGs, some older survival horror that have gotten ridiculous in price that I wouldn't mind having, but that I won't pay what they're going for. But I think what I would pick is some of the big box PC games that are still on my list. Things like the first Gabriel Knight, Secret of Monkey Island, Fallout 1 and 2, games that have just become prohibitively expensive. And especially since when it comes to the PC big boxes, they're really just a display piece for me. I don't play the actual discs. The discs are the least important part of the game for me when it comes to those big boxes. I just like the sort of artwork and the manuals and any goodies that come inside them, and it's just not worth paying what those are currently going for just so that it can sit on my shelf and I can look at it once in a while. Next is, if you could go to any video game world and live there, where would it be and why? And the first thing that came to mind was the world of Eastshade. This is a video game I reviewed a couple years back, and it's just a beautiful, calm, chill world. The game is very relaxing. The world is just full of these gorgeous vistas and beautiful scenery, nice people, even though they are sort of like the anthropomorphic animals, which is a little weird, but I'd probably get used to it if I was there. And it's just a nice, calm place where you can go for nice walks, paint the scenery. I don't paint, but maybe I'd learn to do it if I lived there, and go on hot air balloon rides and walk around the towns. And it just seems really nice and non-violent like most video game worlds are, so I would definitely go for the Eastshade world. So this question is from S. Sean, and it is, what game OSTs do you hope are released on vinyl in 2022? And my number one wish for a video game vinyl is Parasite Eve. It's an amazing soundtrack, very sort of dramatic and operatic, combined with sort of like these good electronic sounds. That's one I've been hoping for a long time. There's been rumblings about it getting a pressing for a few years now, and it's never happened, but I continue to hold out hope, and if that one ever gets released, I will definitely be picking it up. These next questions are from Frederick, and one is, what is your favorite movie of all time? It's very difficult to pick just one movie because, you know, there's so many great ones. I'm going to say Starship Troopers. I love that movie. It's just such a good, satirical, campy, fun movie to watch. I really like anything that's, you know, leading into the like camp or the irony or the dark humor. Those kind of movies tend to be things that really sort of resonate with me. So Starship Troopers, it's fun, it's funny, and the effects on the creatures still hold up, which is something that I always look for. I love a good creature effect that you can still watch 20 years later and be just as impressed by it as you were before. So Starship Troopers. He also asks, if you could travel anywhere in the world, which destination would you choose? And I've always really wanted to go to Italy, sort of related to my love of wine. I particularly love Italian wines, Barolos, Barbarescos, and I would love to go to the Piedmont region and just travel around and go to a bunch of vineyards and a bunch of gorgeous little restaurants and just eat and drink and hopefully hang out with some cool people. Let's take a quick break right here for a word from this video's sponsor. This part of the video is brought to you by HelloFresh. If you're looking to refresh your meal times, HelloFresh is here for you, with recipes that offer seasonal produce delivered from the farm right to your front door. You can choose between mostly meat, veggie, pescatarian, or fit and wholesome recipes that all come with the ingredients you need and step-by-step instructions that anyone can follow regardless of cooking skill. If you want to try it for yourself, go to HelloFresh.com and use the code CannotBeTamed16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Today, I'm making Tuscan sausage linguine because I can't resist a pasta dish. One thing I really like about HelloFresh's meal kits is that they provide the exact amount of ingredients you need for each recipe. This means I don't have to feel bad about wasting money or food by buying too much at the grocery store and not using it. It's also great for introducing new recipes to my repertoire. No more wasting time wondering what I want to make for dinner or getting in a rut of making the same few meals over and over again. Again, if you want delicious meal kits delivered right to your door each week, go to HelloFresh.com and use the code CannotBeTamed16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. So Stuart asks, what are your favorite video game soundtracks? There are so many great video game soundtracks. You know, I collect them on vinyl. Bastion has always been up there for me. Any of the super giant games just have amazing soundtracks. And Bastion, I really like that it's kind of got like a little bit of an industrial feel and a little bit of twang to it. It just got such a nice variety of different kinds of music in it. The Paradise Killer soundtrack has become one of my favorites. It's a gorgeous synthwave soundtrack that goes so well with the game, but also that I love to listen to just on its own. It's probably one of my most played vinyls for sure. Other than that, I like the other Supergiant games. The Transistor soundtrack is absolutely beautiful. The Hades soundtrack, I'm still waiting to get that one on vinyl. But yeah, those are probably my favorites, especially for listening to outside of the game as opposed to them just being enjoyable with the gameplay. What's your most anticipated game in development? That's Silksong. Still anticipating it. It's been a number of years, but one day it will come out. And the last one from Stuart is, do you think there's too much focus on graphics rather than innovation in gameplay? And I think if you look in the AAA space, yes, there's too much focus on graphics as opposed to gameplay. A lot of the games, especially as you go into those sort of like open world mono genre games, they all start feeling very, very similar with just systems borrowed from every other game and smushed together. But I think if you go to the indie space, which is where most of the good games are, that's not the case. They'll try so many different visual styles and aesthetics and art styles, and they both look great, even if they're not, as high in graphical fidelity, but they also, do some different things with mechanics and gameplay as well. So it depends where you're looking for the answer to that question. So this question is from Chris, and he asks, who would be your dream cast in a modern day FMV game? And when it comes to FMV, I actually really like when there are less well-known casts. I like seeing new people that you haven't seen before. I'm not generally someone who wants, bigger actors to cross over into games. I mean, Tim Curry could be in every single FMV game and that would make me happy, but I think that ship has sort of sailed, although he's been in a number of them. One person who I would like to see is Walton Goggins. Honestly, I would just like to see him basically in anything, but I think him in particular could do that sort of overacty thing that you tend to get in FMV games, and I think that would be really fun. So Jelly God asks, have you read any interesting books recently? And yes, one of the books I read recently was a series of short stories called Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. And a lot of these stories were great. First of all, I really love short stories. I like just little bites of different worlds that you can experience. And the sort of big one in that is the story that the movie Arrival is based on. And I absolutely loved how that was written and, how it varied from the movie. It's just a very sort of like, it's science fiction, but it's also just like has a real like humanist undertone, and it's sort of very emotional and just really, really great. There was also some other short stories in there I really liked that dealt with sort of humanity and religion and science and belief and just really interesting stuff. And yeah, if you're looking for some good sci-fi that's, it's got, a good base in science but also has that more human element as well, then I definitely recommend it to anyone. Red Wolfie asks, what would you deem your greatest gaming accomplishment? And I don't tend to think of games in terms of accomplishments. Like I don't go for high scores or, the hardest difficulty. I tend to think of games kind of like other media. So I don't feel accomplished for reading a book or watching a movie, but I think some of the World of Warcraft final boss kills, probably, like maybe killing Illidan for the first time, which was sort of my favorite boss in one of my favorite raid instances ever. I think it's an accomplishment more because it's also a feat of teamwork that requires like planning and cooperation and 25 people coming together and putting aside time in their busy schedule to come and go through this raid instance and accomplish something together. So yeah, I would say, let's say Illidan, or really like any of the final boss kills in the various World of Warcraft expansions. Red Wolfie also wants to know what my favorite pizza topping is. And I can't pick just one pizza topping because it's not like one topping will make any pizza, or there's a pizza that I would have with only one topping. But my favorite pizza in general is a thin crust. It's got sausage, it's got green olives, it's got mushrooms, and it's got feta cheese. That's my perfect pizza. SG Matthews asks, could you speak a bit about your interest in makeup as art and how that became something you wanted to experiment with? Makeup has been something, I've always dabbled in makeup sort of since I was a teenager and sort of been interested in it. But it was really not until, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago that I started watching a lot of makeup content on YouTube and seeing people doing all these interesting looks, and more colorful makeup started coming into style that I really started to get into it. I feel like I'm not the most creative person, or I'm not the most artistic person. Like I can't draw to save my life. I'm not like super good at visual design, but makeup is the one thing where I feel like I can have some of that talent and use it to try different things. So yeah, watching those videos definitely got me more interested, and then just seeing all the beautiful new things that were coming out inspired me to start working on it more. And yeah, so now I have my cosmetic DLC channel where I do makeup talk sometimes. It's sort of very it's not a consistent thing. I sort of just post when I have something to say or have a makeup look I want to share, but it's become a really nice sort of ritual to do my makeup. Like I'll do my eyeshadow most days, even if I'm just sitting at home all day. I'm not going on stream, not going on camera, not going to be on video for any work meetings. I just like sitting down at my vanity and looking at all these beautiful colored shadows and finding some combination to put them on my eyes. And I just find it very calming, and it's like a nice part of my day. Brian asks, what breed is your dog? And Lily is a mutt. I'm not exactly sure what she is. When I got her, I was told that she was a Beagle Husky, which, she looks very much like a yellow lab. I would say she's probably some combination of a lab. She does have some Beagle. You can see in her, some of her markings and her actions. I don't know about the Husky in there, but yeah, she's a mystery mongrel, so who knows. And Brian also asks, for someone new to CRPGs, what would you recommend starting with? I think, and this is very good timing on this question, that the new Shadowrun games are a really good place to start. They're very engaging, they've got really good characters, but the systems inside them aren't overly complex to deal with. And they're all being added to Game Pass next month, as far as I know. So my particular favorite of these was Shadowrun Hong Kong, but the other two are great as well, Shadowrun Returns and Shadowrun Dragonfall. I think those would be a really good one where you can sort of get into CRPGs and see what they're all about before, you know, spreading out into ones that are much deeper systems and that are much longer. Because the Shadowrun games aren't, especially the first one, not too long, just a nice little fairly quick game that you can see if this is a genre that's going to appeal to you or not. Okay, these next one are from Lightborn. First question is, can you please describe how the Cannot Be Tamed YouTube channel came to be? What was your motivation in creating the channel? Do you have any interesting stories related to its creation? So, the YouTube channel stemmed, well, before there was a YouTube channel, there was a blog, which was called Cannot Be Tamed. And I also get I asked a lot, where does that name come from? People have assumptions about what they think that name means, and they're always wrong. But I played World of Warcraft for a long time. My main character who I played was a druid, and a druid's a class that can change into other forms. It can like change into a bear, change into a cat, change into a weird swimming creature. And I also, sort of like on the side, also played a hunter. And a hunter is a class who can tame animals. So it was just kind of like a reference to hunters not being able to tame druids. Druids cannot be tamed. So that's where the title of the blog came from. And as I sort of lost interest in World of Warcraft, I started blogging about video games in general, and then noticing that everyone, for a number of years before I started, had sort of been going the video route, doing YouTube. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll try creating a YouTube channel in addition to the blog and see what that would be like. So when I started off, that's loud. When I started off, I was talking about mostly games that I played as a kid and sort of like re-experiencing them. I did a couple videos about sort of like female representation in games and games that I thought did it well, and the channel has sort of gone from there. Oh, and the other thing, the reason I wanted to make a channel was that around 2014, when all that Gamergate bullshit was going on, I was seeing that like women were sort of being chased out and not being appreciated and getting harassed, and I can be a bit of a contrarian and someone who's always up for a fight, so I felt like, oh, well, I'm gonna go and be like extra visible now if this is what's going on. So that was also part of the reason that I wanted to start making YouTube videos. And Lightborn's other question is, as a content creator, how do you deal with writer's block or lack of motivation to create content for your channel? Do you just power through it, leave it alone for a while, indulge in another hobby, or something else? So I'm not that great at writer's block. A lot of the time I will start a script and I'll just like not know where to go with it, and it'll end up taking a while to, you know, sort of get out with it. In the meantime, I will try, you know, playing another game or thinking of another video idea to do. I do consider my written reviews to be sort of like the real content on my channel. And when I say that, I'm not judging anyone else's content or what they choose to do, but I feel like this video is sort of like a fluffy video where like I don't have to prepare that much. It's not going to be that difficult to edit. And I don't know why I think that the real videos have to be the most difficult ones, but I don't know. That's my own thing. But I will start, you know, doing something else. One thing I've found that really helps with writer's block in particular is reading the script out loud. So if I'm just sitting there staring at the page, sort of rereading it in my head, sometimes it just doesn't work. But if I actually start reading the script like I'm gonna be recording it, then it like triggers something in my brain where I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what I wanna say next. So I think that's one of my biggest and only tricks for overcoming writer's block, just reading it out loud like you're going to be making the video, thinking about what footage you're going to be showing while you're doing it, and that sort of like unlocks things in my brain. Dr. Victator asks, what was the first bad video game you can remember playing? And I think it's a toss-up, I'm not sure which came first, between Prince of Persia on NES and Hudson Hawk on NES. And both of those are games I reviewed way back at the start of the channel. Hudson Hawk is just a very strange game with like weird controls, weird mechanics. You're throwing baseballs at things. It's often very difficult to avoid damage. It's just a strange game. And Prince of Persia is one where I just absolutely hated the controls and the fact that it was a maze and the fact that it was timed. So those are games I remember playing as a kid. And you know, when you're a kid and you've only got a handful of games to choose from, you play what you have, but those are ones that I didn't enjoy much at all. Next one is from R. Aspergu, who asks, hello Pam, as a content creator, how do you deal with critics and sometimes mean comments about the channel? Well, when I get mean comments, I tend to turn them into humor. It sort of depends on my mood and the particular comment and the frequency I'm currently getting them at. If it's, you know, a one-off here or there or something that I find particularly stupid, I will post it on Twitter in order to laugh at it and let all my Twitter followers laugh at it as well. If it's something that I just find, you know, offensive for offensive's sake, I will just do a quick hide users comments from channel, and then I never have to worry about seeing that person's comments again, and I never have to worry about anyone else seeing them again, and they can just feel free to write as many mean comments as their heart desires, just yelling them into the void. And, you know, I like to make my mean comments videos, which is, again, just turning those mean comments into humor. I don't ever take anything too seriously. I mean, there's questions that, or comments that, like, frustrate me, but they're not really mean or they're not really critical. I just think they're dumb, which I have to deal with those. But when they're actually mean, sort of harassing comments, I have no problem just hiding them immediately or responding back, snapping back in some way. I like to do that sometimes. I'm often quick on the responses, but mostly I just try to laugh at them and think about how the mean comments aren't about me. It's sort of a reflection of how sad the people leaving them are. So yeah. Sean O says, love your content. I'm sure it's safe to say that we all love playing video games. How many hours of playing do you do in a week or month? So I play a lot of video games. People often ask me, how do you play so many video games? And I don't know, I just do it. I do other things too, but I always manage to make time for games. I would say on average per week, about 20 hours of video games. Sometimes it's more than that. Like when I get really into something like Elden Ring recently, it's probably more than 20 hours. But yeah, I spend, like on a weekend, I'll usually get like a good session in there with like 3 or 4 hours, and then maybe like an hour or two every other night, which now that I'm doing the math in my head is probably less than 20. So maybe 15 or 20 hours a week, but yeah. This next one is from Fillmore Pockets. Hello Pam, love the channel. Your honest opinions on new, old, popular, and forgotten games. Thank you. Which era of video games is your favorite? So I have to say, this era of video games is my favorite because I can play anything I want to. I don't know, maybe if you're looking for a specific generation, but I feel like games just keep getting better and the old ones aren't going anywhere unless, there's some nonsense around licensing that causes them to be pulled off shelves. But this is like the best gaming's ever been. There's just huge, thriving indie scene where games are great. There's the occasional AAA thing that comes along that has, a really good story or really interesting gameplay. And I can still play everything from all the generations I loved before. Can emulate old cartridge-based games. I can put stuff on my PlayStation. So yeah, I like games right now. Next question is, what are your top 5 movies based on video games? And I honestly don't think I can pick a top 5. I don't think many of them are very good. And even if I were to list 5 that I think are the least bad, that's not saying much. I do like the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider movie quite a bit. I'm gonna spin this question off into something else because there's this movie called As Above, So Below, and it is sort of like a found footage movie about a girl and a group of people who go down in the sort of tunnels underneath Paris and find all this weird stuff. And as I was watching this movie, I just couldn't stop thinking, this should be the Tomb Raider movie. It's like Tomb Raider, but spooky. But you have this woman archaeologist. She's got issues with her dad who also sort of went missing or did the same thing that she did. And she goes under all these tunnels, and there's puzzles and there's traps and there's scares and there's action. And I was just watching it thinking if this was actually a Tomb Raider movie, this would be the best video game movie. But sorry, I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about that movie because it's the perfect video game movie that is not a video game movie. And the next question is, if you could make a documentary about any video game company, or video game industry professional, what or who would it be? And I feel like the closest thing I'm ever gonna have to a documentary is my video on The Dig, which I enjoy doing. I don't tend to, with those videos like that and Loom, I don't tend to pick a game and then research. I tend to be reading, come across something interesting, and then be oh, this would make a good video. So there's not really any specific game where I'm oh yeah, I wanna go real deep into the making of this or the meaning of this. But I have been thinking, and I would kind of like to make a sort of documentary style video on just the sort of early pioneers of game development, the early women pioneers of game development, like Roberta Williams, Jane Jensen, and like Brenda Romero, and just like go into some more attention on them. But I don't know if that's in the cards for me, if there's any more documentaries that I'll be doing. Karn FX asks, what languages would you like to learn? I would like to learn any language, honestly. If I could be bilingual in any way, I would love that. I've learned over the years, I'm not good at learning languages. I have tried multiple. I live in Canada, so I had to take French from grade 1 through grade 9. I actually skipped grade 9 French because I was good at it and went right to get grade 10. And then I never took French again, and now I know very little other than like basic greetings or asking where the washroom is. I also tried to learn Italian because I wanted to read Inferno in the original language. So I took Italian in first year of university. That didn't go so well either. On my own, I have tried to teach myself Polish because my background is Polish. On my dad's side is Polish-Ukrainian. Polish is really hard. There's like no vowels in it. I tried to learn Russian. It's hard to learn a whole different like alphabet in Cyrillic. That didn't go super well either. And I've tried to learn Spanish just because I felt like it would be useful. And none of them have ever progressed past learning how to order drinks. So I would love to learn any of those languages, but I don't know that it will happen for me. Another question from Carnifex is, what game, any game, would be best to be converted into an FMV game? And I think for these, something like the things that Supermassive make, like the Until Dawns and the Dark Pictures trilogy, they're coming out with a new one. They go so far into like the motion capture and the facial expressions and the getting the somewhat known actors to be in them. I think it would be really cool if they just like went right for it and just made it an actual FMV game rather than rendering the characters. I think that would be interesting. I'd love to be able to like control an avatar of like a real person moving around and, you know, see all of those with the real actors rather than the sort of somewhat uncanny valley representations of them on screen. And another thing, I wouldn't say this would be best, but I think it would be hilarious, is if the next Dark Souls game just had FMV for the cutscenes and for the creepy NPCs laughing at you. I don't know that that would be good, but I would find it personally hilarious, so I would like to see that too. Brian asks, what's on your list of retro games you want to play? Basically anything I own that I haven't played yet. There's some JRPGs I want to play. I really want to finally try Final Fantasy Tactics. I want to try the Wild Arms games. I want to continue with the Suikoden series and play more of those. I want to play Fatal Frame. I want to finish Fatal Frame 1 and play Fatal Frame 3. And I'd like to just try more of the sort of classic like 8 or 16-bit shoot 'em ups and platformers that I haven't played yet. The list is endless. He also asks, does Lily have a favorite game? And if I can get it on camera, I will show you what Lily's favorite game is.
Give me that treat ball. Give me that treat ball. Give me that treat ball, you awful little dog. Give me that ball. Oh, where are you going? Double back on me? Give me that ball. Give me it.
Ricardo asks, why are video games important to you? And that's a more difficult question than it sounds. I think they're important because they've always been there. Like they've always been a source of entertainment for me. I've always been big on, you know, all media. Like as I mentioned before, I think reading and watching movies and watching television shows, listening to music, and video games are just sort of like that, but a more active way of participating in them. So I just like that the immersion of video games, of like going into another world, learning sort of the language of the video games, mastering the controls of them. I just find as an entertainment source, it's the most engaging one out there. So yeah, that's why video games are important to me. Matt Otterpop asks, does the fact that you have a fan base ever seem surreal to you, and has it ever seeped into your real life? And yes, it is very surreal to think that I have a fan base. Even the word fan kind of, I don't know, kind of skeeves me out a little bit, and I don't like to think about it. But yeah, the fact that people look forward to my videos every week, like, that's kind of bizarre to me, and, you know, want to support me on the various platforms I'm on and things I'm doing. It is a little bit strange. I very much appreciate it because I didn't really expect it to happen. As far as seeping into real life, not very much. Like, occasionally if I'm at some specific gaming event, like a convention or a swap, I'll get people coming up and saying, you know, they like my videos, which is always really nice, and it's pretty cool to get recognized at those things. But other than that, I wouldn't say it has seeped into my real life too much. The Devoured Eagle asks, it would be interesting to know how that AVGN Aladdin Upper Deck collab worked for everyone. Did James just tell everyone to go nuts, or did he send specific directions? Because my guess is that he did all the post-processing stuff. So, I can only speak how they worked for me, though my speculation is that James was on the video. I doubt he had much to do with actually gathering people or producing the video, like editing it or anything. But when it came to me, actually Erin Plays reached out to me. She said that Justin, one of the guys from Screenwave, was looking for people to take part in this video, and she asked me if I wanted to. They said just react to your game shelf exploding, and I do not have an Aladdin deck enhancer. I doubt many people do. They suggested putting Aladdin games, so I think I had a Genesis Aladdin game on my shelf at that time, just I guess because the name's the same. But yeah, it was like 5 to 10 seconds, send us a clip, pretend your game shelf has exploded, and react to it. So I did that, and I was actually kind of foolish. I sent them two, because one I swore and one I didn't swear, and it's like, it's fucking AVGN. Of course they don't care if I swear, but I was like, oh, if swearing's not okay, here's a non-swearing one, which in retrospect was pretty stupid. But yeah, it was very quick. It was like, hey, can you do this by today? Send the video in, and that was pretty much all that I had to do with the process. It was a great opportunity though. Like, that little, I don't know, maybe 8 seconds got me a few thousand subscribers. So that was a pretty cool opportunity. But yeah, it was just sort of a very quick, very like, oh yep, just do this, send it along, and that's all the interaction I had with it. Lily's finally decided to join me. She's a little traumatized. We've had the annual fire inspection happening yesterday and today, so she's feeling a little bit wimpy because she hates the fire alarm. She's just been shaking and drooling for hours, it seems. Okay, Yesay Asha asks, if you could bring any vampire from any franchise into Vampire the Masquerade, which one would you choose? And please God, let it be Count Chocula. So I don't think it would be Count Chocula. If I had to pick a vampire, it would be the vampire Lestat. I think he would be an excellent addition to Vampire the Masquerade. He's so flamboyant. He's kind of a dick. He's like just a really fun character that I feel like would just slide right into that franchise and be a super fun one to have to deal with as an NPC in one of those games. All right, now Erguys83 asks, my question would be if you think games or entire generations can age so much and badly, graphically and gameplay-wise, to a point where it's no longer fun to play them. This happens to me with anything prior to the NES and even some NES games. I also wonder if that will eventually happen with the Super Nintendo, Genesis, etc. So I think they can. I mean, I think a prime example of it is the early 3D games. I find most of the N64 library, something I do not ever want to play with. I find they're very difficult to go back to, both from a graphical standpoint, where they're just kind of hard to look at, and from a control standpoint, with that stupid controller and not really having a way to control the camera except with those little yellow buttons, which is just not a fun way to play games. I think that it has something also to do with sort of where you got into gaming. Like, I got into gaming in the NES era, so I also agree that like Atari, things like that, they just look, to me, so primitive that they don't really hold any appeal. So I think it depends. If you started with Atari, you probably feel differently than that. But there are games like that. Even, I mean, it depends on the genre as well, because while I think if you have something more on the simple side, like a platformer or a shoot 'em up on an NES, like they hold up pretty well because of the simplicity. Whereas when you look into something more complicated, like when you start getting into Final Fantasy I or anything that has lots of menus and, you know, is awkward to control, then I think those become kind of unplayable. But yeah, I think it does depend on sort of where your particular gaming history started. But yeah, the big one is that early 3D era. I mean, I know the PS1 was that time as well, but a lot of my favorite PS1 games are the ones that were still using the 2D graphics, and the ones that started with the 3D, I don't ever really want to go back to them. Next question is from Token Black. Okay. What do you think your niche is in the gaming channel community? I don't know if I have a niche. I think part of what's made my channel what it is and has kept me interested in it for such a long time is that I go with where my interests lie. So, you know, where I started out mostly doing NES games and retro games, I sort of branched out into more modern things, some more opinion pieces, sort of like doing the type of videos I like. So I'm not sure that there's really a niche. I mean, when I think about what my videos are, I feel like they're honest, like not pulling punches. And I'm not saying that other people are not honest, but like I say exactly what I think of the games, no matter what other people think or what the common trend or thought on those is. And I also really like highlighting things that are a little bit less well known. I like, you know, sort of picking out indie games with things like my Game Pass videos, showing games that people might not have heard people talk about too much. So I think, yeah, it's hard to say that I have a real niche, because I feel like I change up my content fairly often, and there's a lot of variety, even from video to video, on what the kind of topic is. Anton asks, did you go to college? If so, what did you study? Yeah, I went to university. I have an honors Bachelor of Science, and I studied psychology and physical anthropology. Leon asks, what would be a reason for you to stop making these videos? And the thing that will one day eventually stop me from making these videos is just getting bored, not enjoying making them anymore. I feel like I'm gonna be playing video games for my entire life, but you know, one day I might think like, hey, spending hours editing and writing isn't worth it anymore. It's not something I enjoy doing. Maybe move on to like something more relaxed, like podcasting or something. But I feel like I'm gonna keep doing this for as long as it's still interesting to me. And I think, sort of crossing back to something from a couple questions ago, the fact that I don't have a niche, that I don't feel the need to pigeonhole myself into like one system, one generation, one kind of video, has really helped me to continue and not get bored. So my channel goes wherever my interests go, and I think that really helps me for not getting bored or not becoming frustrated, feeling like this is more work than it's worth. JMRS asks, do you have a boyfriend? No. Alright, so that is it for the Q&A. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. I tried to pick the ones that would be the most interesting to answer, but I'm sure I'll do another one of these one day in the future. But anyway, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about things, and I will see you in my next video. If you want to see more, check out one of my other videos here. There's also a link in the description of the video if you would like to check out today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.